The grand galactic forum hovered like a pearl over twin suns, casting symmetrical shadows across the void. It was a place built to last 10,000 years, glimmering halls of diplomacy polished daily by windless drones, and banners of peace flapping gently in artificial atmospheres. Delegates from across 500 species gathered beneath its crystalline dome. Robes rustled, tentacles flexed, datapads flickered with glowing scripts. There was order, tradition, harmony, and not a single human in sight. High Chancellor Vurak of the Creel Empire, a sinewy reptilian with jeweled horns and a face like cracked obsidian, stood from the central podium. His voice rang out, echoing with mechanical dignity. "The matter is settled," he declared, gesturing with two clawed hands. "By majority vote, soul-born representatives shall henceforth be suspended from all council deliberations, summits, and decision-making processes, effective immediately." The chamber erupted in subtle movements of approval, head bobbing from the Tsuraki, tooth clicks from a Murab, slow tail flourishes from the Azathii. All the ceremonial gestures that signaled agreement without the vulgarity of clapping. One delegate, Ambassador Shun of the Vake Dominion, leaned forward with a smirk coiled across his three lips. "Finally," he said, voice syrupy, "the humans have been a tick beneath the skin of progress for too long. Unstable, uncultured, and let's be honest, overarmed for a species that still refrigerates cheese." Soft chuckles rippled through the seats. Even the usually silent Drell emitted a pulse of violet light from their chest glands, laughter in their own way. "I heard they once elected a man who thought the moon was haunted," Shun added. A few delegates wheezed. Vurak raised a hand, amused but composed. "Enough, Shun. This is not a roast. It is a resolution." "But they'll retaliate," murmured a younger voice, Delegate Hera of the Lestari, barely 50 rotations old. Her skin shimmered like silver dust. "Won't they?" Shun waved her off with the arrogance of age. "They'll send a message. Maybe boycott galactic yogurt. But humans don't do revenge. They whine, loudly, then go back to grilling meats and watching nostalgia." "Still," said someone from the rear, a soft-spoken aide with bioluminescent fins that glowed faint green. "They were quiet during the vote. That worries me." Vurak dismissed the comment with a blink. "Let them stew in their little blue planet. The council moves forward." And so it did. Or tried to. Because 3 minutes later, every screen in the chamber dimmed. Not black. Not static. Just dimmed. Then, a polite chime. A single tone mid-range, melodic, almost friendly. And a human face appeared. The man on screen wore a crisp navy jacket with no rank insignia, only a small pin shaped like Earth. His face was clean-shaven, angular, with eyes the color of summer thunderclouds. Hair slicked back, calm, polite, dangerous in a way that didn't announce itself. He sipped from a glass of amber liquid, tea, maybe, and spoke with a smooth southern accent. "Well," he began, "I reckon y'all made your decision. That's all right. No hard feelings. Earth won't be attendin' no more of your sittin' and talkin'. Wasn't much of a party, anyway." Shun straightened. "How did they breach our—" "Not breached," said the human, still smiling. "Invited ourselves." Gasps. Fins lit up. Mandibles clicked. The message continued, unhurried. "We ain't mad. Promise. We just figured we'd listen from the back for a spell. You know, observe." He held up his glass in a lazy toast. "Carry on. We'll be nearby." The screen cut to black. For a moment, no one moved. The silence was raw. Then the Creel Chancellor exhaled sharply. "Shut down their relay. Trace the signal. Block all soul frequencies." But it wasn't that simple. Over the next 10 minutes, one by one, tiny anomalies appeared across the galactic grid. Blips. Unknown transponders. Hundreds. Then thousands. Near moons. Behind asteroids. In low orbit above diplomatic satellites. Unarmed, unregistered. Just watching. Galactic defense attempted to triangulate, to disable, to interfere, but the systems were evasive. Adaptive. They weren't drones. They were tanks. Atmospheric tanks. Land adaptable, multi-terrain. Camouflaged in orbit, drifting like space debris. No logos. No emissions. But unmistakably human. A whisper started among the delegates. Not spoken, too dangerous, but felt. A current of cold realization. They'd been baited. Braddock, if that was his name, hadn't made a threat. He hadn't needed to. He'd simply reminded them what humans did best. Watch, wait, and smile. One delegate, a plant-like being from the Qatari cluster, tried to raise a point of order. Surely this is posturing. Surely. A small chime interrupted again. Not a broadcast this time. Just a ping. One single, terrifying ping from an asteroid 30 kilometers outside the forum's gravity well. Its surface shimmered. And then it moved. Cameras locked in. The asteroid unfolded. Legs. Trax cannons. A fusion core lit up like a miniature sun. It wasn't a rock. It was a mobile command unit. Human design. Camouflaged like nature's shrug. Council alarms rang. Weapons systems activated. Warnings flashed. Braddock's face never reappeared. Only a message. Peace remains our preference, but not our weakness. A single line. No explanation. No direct contact. Only presence. And silence. Down in the private security chamber beneath the forum, 2 alien officers stood staring at a console. "What do they want?" asked the younger one, his scales pulsing nervously. The older officer didn't respond for a moment. Then, almost reverently, he said, "They're not waiting for what they want. They're watching for what we'll do." Above them, in the now uneasy main chamber, Chancellor Vurak tried to regain composure. "No formal violation has occurred. Let us not panic. We will send a clarification, perhaps a limited reinstatement. Temporary. Until we—" But a faint rumble shook the chamber. Not from above. From below. The forum had no natural seismic activity. Not on this orbit. And yet the floor vibrated, gently, like a warning purr. Whispers rose. Some delegates began reaching for exit routes, security clearances. Others opened private diplomatic channels to Earth-affiliated colonies. Shun, ever the peacock, stood firm. "They're bluffing," he snapped. "Tanks don't scare us. They don't belong here." From the far end of the chamber, a door opened. Not a grand, ceremonial entrance. A side door. Maintenance corridor. From it, 3 humans walked in. Unarmed. No armor. Just matching dark suits. Calm expressions. Eyes sweeping the room like auditors. One carried a folding metal chair. They didn't speak. They walked slowly to the center of the forum floor. Unfolded the chair. Saturday. Braddock wasn't with them, but his presence was felt. A ripple of realization spread through the chamber. Not fear, not exactly. Something older. Older than strategy or war. Recognition. Humans weren't posturing. They weren't retaliating. They were proving something. That they could arrive without invitation. Sit without permission. Watch without blinking. And wait without mercy. In her seat, Delegate Hira whispered the ancient proverb of the Lestari. Never exile the species that invented vengeance. No one laughed this time. Above the forum, 1,000 tanks turned toward the stars and waited. Captain Miles Braddock stood barefoot on the steel floor of the Yosemite Dawn, letting the cold bite into the arches of his feet. He held a tin mug of lukewarm coffee, steam curling just beneath his nose as he gazed out through the reinforced viewport. Beyond it, the Galactic Forum spun slowly in artificial orbit, glimmering like a snow globe waiting to crack. He didn't blink. 32 more scans just ran diagnostics on our tanks, murmured Lieutenant Araya, seated at a tactical console behind him. 17 security attempts. No confirmation pings. They're getting nervous. Miles sipped, then exhaled. Good. Araya grinned. You're enjoying this. Wouldn't call it enjoyment. More like stretching before a run. Below them, strewn across near vacuum like scattered beads, floated the unmanned ghosts of Earth's wrath. Thousands of atmospheric tanks, disguised as carbon-rich debris, gliding silent as memory. No active weapons. No lights. Just dark hulls with reinforced treads and oxidized plating. Some bore painted slogans. Sorry about your fence. This one's for Grandma. Roll Tide, baby. Some aliens believed the tanks were fake. Mock-ups. Prototypes. But the Council's military analysts, the real ones, had already run the spectral scans. Each one was fully armed. Powered down, sure. But alive. Waiting. Back on the forum, panic took root like mold and marble. Security teams whispered beneath breath masks. Some attempted to encrypt new emergency frequencies. Others simply stared up at the sky with the kind of awe only survivors feel. At the core of the chaos sat a polished war table, empty now except for shifting holograms that jittered with unreadable static. Delegate Hera stared at the rotating render of Earth's fleet, her hands trembling inside her diplomatic sleeves. "They're not responding," she whispered. Vurak was pacing, no longer the poised chancellor, but a predator sniffing confusion in his own lair. "They want us to respond first." "Then what do they do?" "Nothing. Until we do." Hera tilted her head. "That's the part one don't understand. They're still." "Exactly." Vurak's tail snapped. "No ultimatums. No demands. No clarifications. They sit still. They stare. They listen. Listening isn't a crime. It is when it's Earth." A muted thump echoed in the hall. Not loud. Not rhythmic. Just there. A sound where there should be none. The kind of sound that doesn't come from metal or machine, but from presence. A soft sound that scratches the edges of perception. Delegate Shun arrived late to the chamber, having spent the morning in his personal spa bubble. He arrived moist, overperfumed, and laughing. "Have we not sent a cease and desist yet?" he asked, waving off the silence. "You're letting them win by looking afraid. They're humans, not ghosts." Hera looked up. "You know what humans do best, Shun? Complain." "No," she said. "They simplify. While we debate and layer strategy like woven silk, they look at the whole loom and burn it." Shun chuckled. "You've been watching their movies again, haven't you?" But the humor slipped from his face when a private alert shimmered on his wristband. He tapped it. "Read once. Read again." "Impossible," he muttered. "What?" "They've bypassed our perimeter without moving." Hera stepped closer. "Say that again." "According to our sensors, they're inside our defense radius. But the ships haven't moved. Not 1 meter." Vurak spun. "That's not bypassing. That's being invited in." Above them, on the human flagship, Araya glanced up. "They're scrambling. Internal frequencies are saturated. Multiple navies trying to contact each other. But the bandwidth is jammed." Braddock asked. "No, sir. Just full. Like they're all screaming at once." Braddock nodded. "That's worse." He turned to the small crew gathered at the operations platform. 3 humans, all in black suits. One wore cowboy boots. Another was knitting. The third had a face scar that pulsed faintly with subdermal tech. "Package ready?" Braddock asked. The one with boots nodded. Wrapped, bowed, and rigged with plausible deniability. The knitter added, "Printed the treaty on recycled parchment, too. Very diplomatic." Scarface grinned. "Even scented it like apple pie." Braddock smirked. "Let's deliver." Down on the forum, another noise filtered through the chaos. Click. Not a weapon, not a door, but a click of a folding chair. From the far left corner of the council chamber, a human sat down. Nobody saw him enter. He wasn't armed. He wasn't loud. He just unfolded a chair and sat. Calm. Back straight. Legs crossed. He held a small white box on his lap, tied with a blue ribbon. For 10 seconds, nobody moved. Then he waved. A small, casual, almost apologetic wave. And placed the box on the table. Security hesitated. Their weapons didn't lock. Their AI guidance refused to target him. Shun stepped forward, veins in his temples glowing purple. "This is a violation." The man in the chair shrugged. "Not really. Y'all banned us from attending. Didn't say nothing about sitting." Hera approached. "What's in the box?" "A choice," he said. "But it don't open unless the council agrees." "Agrees to what?" "To listen. Properly this time." Vurak barked, "This is blackmail." "No, sir. This is courtesy. You're free to decline." He smiled. God, how humans smiled. Not with teeth. With intent. Vurak gestured, and 3 guards surrounded the man. He didn't flinch. Instead, he looked straight at the nearest guard, a Tsaraki, all chitin and nerves, and said, "Your daughter's on Mars, ain't she? Medical program, year 2. The guard froze. "We funded her scholarship," the man said softly. "Glad she's doing well." The guard didn't move. Neither did the others. That silence wasn't just strategic now. It was surgical. Vurak's voice cracked. "Remove him." But no one moved. The human nodded once, then stood, leaving the box untouched. "I'll be outside. Got more chairs if y'all want to join." He walked to the door, unhurried, calm, and disappeared behind it. A beat later, every screen in the chamber blinked once. Then, in unison, they showed the same thing. A map. The Galactic Forum, surrounded by what appeared to be civilian debris, until the map zoomed. Every dot expanded into a tank. Not just tanks. Variants. Desert class. Urban class. Orbital assault. Mobile refineries. Stealth tanks wrapped in tech humanity hadn't even sold to the galaxy yet. Each one broadcasting a frequency, subtle, patient, constant. A heartbeat. Braddock's voice echoed through the chamber, not from speakers, but from their own translation implants. "We ain't here to fight. We're here to witness." What happens next depends on how y'all behave while being watched. One final message blinked at the bottom of the map. Peace remains an option, but not the only one. Back aboard the Yosemite Dawn, Araya leaned back. "They're spiraling." Braddock stared at the tanks like they were puzzle pieces falling into place. "They'll think we're bluffing," Araya added. Braddock finally blinked. "Let M." The table was small metal and borrowed from a human storage locker orbiting in geosync above the Galactic Forum. It creaked slightly as it was unfolded by one of Earth's envoys, an older man with smile lines, salt gray hair, and eyes like weathered iron. No badge, no weapon, just presence. He planted the legs firmly in the middle of the council chamber, ignoring the stairs, and pulled out 2 folding chairs. One for himself, one for the moment he knew was coming. Across the chamber, Vurak sat stiffly at the high seat, lips curled, tail coiled in agitation. "Is this your negotiation table?" he snapped. "It looks like something scavenged from a pre-industrial ruin." The human looked up. "Well," he said, voice warm and grounded, "we offered to use yours. But you locked the doors." Delegate Shun scoffed. "Do all your diplomats carry furniture?" The human smiled, slow and unbothered. "We bring what we need." He opened a battered metal briefcase and placed 2 items on the table. A single sheet of paper, thick and aged, and a sealed envelope marked with Earth's crest, wheat encircling a sword. Hera watched from her seat. Something inside her tensed. This man wasn't Braddock, but the way he held still, the way his words came measured and friendly, as if carved with care, that was Earth's signature. Not volume, not bravado, patience. "We have a proposition," the man said. Vurak's voice rang out, brittle with pride. "You have no standing." "We have tanks," he said softly. That silenced the chamber. The man gestured to the paper. "These are terms. They're not demands. Not yet. But they reflect what we believe would benefit the galaxy." Shun leaned forward. "What do you want? Applause? A parade?" "Peace," the man said. Hera frowned. "But you're surrounding us." "Exactly. Peace is more persuasive when it isn't optional." Delegate Kalar of the Murab clan slithered forward, eyes glittering. "You're making a threat." "I'm making an offer," the man said. "One that comes with incentives. We want Earth reinstated. Full privileges. Voting rights. Trade routes restored." Shun laughed. "That's all? You surround us with 1,000 tanks to reclaim your seat at the table." The man tilted his head. "We didn't come for your table." Silence thickened like smoke. Hera spoke slowly. "Then what did you come for?" The man's eyes flicked to her, not unkind. "To show you what the galaxy looks like when Earth is watching. He stood up and pointed to the envelope. Inside is a second set of terms. These are less friendly. Shun strode forward, snatched the envelope, and tore it open. Then his eyes widened. He read silently for a full minute, jaw slackening, color draining from his tri-veined face. "What is it?" Vurak demanded. Shun handed him the page, hands trembling. Vurak read, and dropped the page like it burned. "Impossible." The human didn't move. Kilar hissed. "Explain it." "We've mapped your private fleets, shadow vessels, hidden supply lines, interstellar black markets, bribes, unregistered weapons labs. All of it." Hira gasped. You have our intelligence networks." "Yours," he said, "and 39 others." Vurak growled. "How?" "The man finally Saturday we listened." Kilar's voice thinned. "How long?" The man sipped from a tin flask he pulled from his pocket. "Since you banned us." Delegate Threem, a silent observer for most of the session, finally spoke. "You plan to be exiled." "We counted on it," the man said. A breath passed through the room. Shun's claws curled into the table's edge. "You baited us into arrogance." "We let you do what you wanted to do," the man said. "Turns out, when humans aren't in the room, a lot of folks forget manners." Hira's voice dropped. "This isn't diplomacy. This is manipulation." The man turned to her. "Then why are you still listening?" No one moved. No one could. Because behind the polite tone, behind the tin mug and fold-up furniture, sat a human who knew every single person in the room now had something to lose. "We're not here to rule," he said. "We don't want your seats or your scepters. We just want you to remember, Earth isn't the child at the table." He pointed at the tanks on the map projection now rotating above the chamber. "That's not a threat. That's the last warning you'll get before we stop using paper." Kilar coiled back. "You destroy the forum?" The human leaned forward. "We've destroyed better." Shun barked a laugh. "Hi, Brittle. You expect us to sign? To cave? To submit like whipped diplomats?" "No," said the man. "I expect half of you to defect by sunrise." Hira blinked. "What?" He stood again, this time more slowly. "There's another chamber. Another table. Orbiting above us. Delegates from 7 systems are already on board. Yours could be next." Vurak's voice roared. "Treason." "It's choice," the man said. "You banned Earth. Now Earth's hosting its own summit." Shun threw a data slate across the floor. "You're dividing the galaxy." "We're correcting it," he said. Kilar's voice rose. "And who gave you the right?" He looked around the chamber. Quietly. Carefully. 142 colonies who remember what real peace looked like, he said. And 23 species whose trade you suffocated. And all the civilians who never got a voice in this golden chamber. He nodded toward the metal table. "This ain't gold. But it doesn't rust. That's the difference." No one clapped. No one spoke. Because the noise in the silence had shifted. It was no longer about watching. It was about choosing. Outside, the tanks hadn't moved. But they were no longer just weapons. They were vote counters. And every delegate felt the weight of their own silence. Hira stepped forward. She opened the first page. She read the terms. Trade realignment. Human oversight for future military pacts. Neutral elections for High Council seats. A joint cultural accord. Humans would share literature, film, music. Vurak's face twisted. "You want us to consume your entertainment." He looked up. "You could use some." Shun stood. "You think Earth stories are worth that much?" The man gave him a long, weary smile. "Our stories are all we brought to the stars. Everything else came after." Hira held the paper a little tighter, and her voice, when it came, was almost inaudible. "I've read your books." The man looked to her, eyebrows lifted. She nodded quietly. "Some of them. Quiet things. About kindness. Sacrifice. Grief. No species writes like humans do." Vurak hissed. "Don't romanticize them." But it was too late. Because she was seeing him now, not just the threat, or the tanks, or the insult. The method. The artistry of it. Humans didn't just win wars. They shaped narratives. and they'd just written the forum into a corner. "Return to your ship," Vurak said finally. "You've made your point." The man bowed, then walked to the chair, folded it up slowly, held it under his arm like a keepsake, and turned. Just before he reached the chamber doors, he paused. "Braddock sent his regards." Then he stepped through the archway and vanished. A beat passed. Then two. The projection above flickered once. The map updated. New vessels appeared. Hundreds. Ships from neutral systems, moving toward Earth's orbital station. Council members turned pale, because they hadn't just been surrounded. From the inside, a soft chime rang, and a new message appeared on every screen. "The summit has begun. You're late." The ships began arriving in silence. One by one, they emerged from folded space, some gleaming, some battered, none bearing weapons. Freighters, science vessels, refugee carriers, planetary delegates without flags. They had no military alignment, no formal alliances. And yet, all of them, without exception, fell into orbit above the Galactic Forum, not around the Council, but above Earth's temporary summit station. A line had been drawn, but it had never needed to be spoken. Delegate Vurak stood in front of the great viewport, fists curled, tail twitching in slow arcs of disbelief. The council chamber behind him was unraveling, whispers turning into shouts, subcommittees arguing over protocol, guards failing to maintain order. He'd spent decades shaping this balance, and it had all unraveled with chairs. "Traitors," he hissed, "each one of them." Hera sat quietly in her designated circle, shoulders square, hands resting calmly. She had not joined the shouting. She had not stood when panic broke the room. She only watched. Behind her, a new message floated above the central console. Day 1, Earth Summit, neutral orbit. Subject, galactic future. Attendance, 68 species. And counting. "They came to you for safety," she said, her voice low. "They came for chaos," Vurak growled. "They came because the humans bribed them." No, Hera's gaze stayed fixed on the viewport. "They came because they remembered something we forgot." "What?" She turned slowly. "That peace is only peace when it belongs to everyone." Across the chamber, the metal folding table still sat, unmoved, undisturbed. But no one approached it now. It had become a symbol, not of furniture, but of ownership. A reminder that Earth didn't ask for permission. It simply arrived with what it needed. Outside, Earth's tanks remained still. No power surges, no aggression. Just the quiet confidence of machinery built to outlast insults. On board the Yosemite Dawn, Captain Braddock stood on the upper deck with his hand resting on the railing, expression unreadable. The light from the binary stars shimmered across the polished glass panels. Below him, the Council's defensive fleet hovered like a swarm of indecisive insects, weapon ports closed, engines warm, intentions unraveling. "Sir," said Araya, her voice almost reverent. "One of their destroyers just defected. Power down, transferred command to our side." He didn't flinch. "Which one?" "Calestrian cruiser. 30-year vet. High-value target. They'll send a message to cover the shame. Say it was rogue." Araya nodded. "Should we respond?" Braddock finally turned, his boots echoing faintly on the floor. "No. They already know." Behind him, the other officers gathered around the central holodisplay. Delegates were arriving by the minute to Earth's summit, a chaos of voices, priorities, and agendas. But every species that landed sent one item ahead of their formal documentation. A chair. Some were ornate. Others were crude. One was carved from driftwood. Another from old reactor plating. One species sent a vat of sentient goo that shaped itself into a seat upon arrival. None of them matched. None of them needed to. Araya smiled. "They're playing your game." "No," Braddock said. "They're remembering it was always theirs." Back in the council chamber, Shun had lost what little patience remained. His skin had gone from coral pink to near crimson, and his voice scraped like gravel. "We should detain the Earth representative." "He's already gone," Hera said softly. "Then strike the tanks. Remove them by force." With what fleet? She asked. Shun faltered. The Council's navy. Won't fire. They're paralyzed. Because if even one tank retaliates, everyone watching this summit will remember who started the war. Kalar spoke up from the shadows. So we do nothing? We listen, she said. Like they did. Vurak spun toward her, rage boiling in his throat. You would kneel to earth? No, she stood slowly. But I would stand with them. He snarled. Then stand alone. A new alert pulsed across the chamber. The tanks had moved. Not toward the forum, but away from it, outward, retreating into defensive perimeters, shifting into a silent circle around the Earth-led summit, forming a loose cordon of protection, not aggression. They're pulling back. Vurak asked, voice unsure. No, Hera murmured. They're preparing something else. In orbit, the Yosemite Dawn received the final clearance. Captain, Araya said, scanning the display, we've reached quorum. 75 systems, now formally aligned under summit recognition. Braddock inhaled, then gave the order. Broadcast the accord. Across every channel, every species universal translator clicked on. The voice that followed was Braddock's, but it came not from behind a podium. It came like a story told from a porch. You invited us once. Then you exiled us. You asked for peace, and we offered it. You mocked it, then feared it. Now you face a decision not enforced by weapons, but by mirrors. We brought our own chairs, because we knew we weren't welcome at yours. But this table we've made, it holds more than just power. It holds a future. You can join us, or be remembered as those who locked the doors before history kicked them open. Back in the chamber, Vurak trembled. They can't mean to replace us. But the chamber doors opened again, and one by one, delegates began leaving, not fleeing, walking, past security, past protocol, into the light of ships that had come not to attack, but to choose. By the hour's end, the chamber was half empty. The folding table still sat in the center, unclaimed, until Hera stepped forward. She reached out and ran a hand across its battered surface. And then she sat, not in a council chair, but in the second folding one. In the silence that followed, even Vurak did not speak. Only the echo of his own breath reminded him that he had not yet become irrelevant. But irrelevance does not arrive loudly. It arrives politely. Later, as night fell on the artificial sky dome, a new projection lit up above the forum. Galactic Reconstruction Dialogue, hosted by Earth, open to all. At the center of the projection sat a single object, not a ship, not a weapon, a table, surrounded by chairs, each one different, each one waiting. And, at the head, the last chair of all, left empty. Braddock watched it through the viewport, hands behind his back. Sir, Araya asked, who's that one for? He didn't turn. Someone who still thinks they're in charge. The stars outside blinked softly, waiting.